Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have you here, and I am so excited for my next guest, Miss Kellie Walsh. She is a photographer, has been a photographer for her whole life, owns Kellie Walsh Photography, and she also runs the Divine Hive, a place where people can come together and come together in community and practice meditation and just really come together, not just as a group, but come together spiritually and not just physically, and actually learn how to be together so that we can raise our energy. So
Yes,
welcome,
exactly.
Kellie.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be on. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, thanks. And some of you might recognize her from the podcast that I was on just a couple of weeks ago, Spiritual Shadow Boxing. I was on with her and another Kellie and Fareshta Ramsey. And you guys remember Fareshta from previously when I did an interview with her. And so I am so excited to have Kellie here because uh, what we talked about in that podcast when we got into the hashtag about defund the police, some people were like, "Oh my gosh, you guys kind of had a really go at it with that conversation because you were coming from opposite sides."
Yeah.
And I wanted to have her on one because we did have that conversation where we were coming at the hashtag from opposite opinions, and two because we have talked since then and you guys know how I am about sitting with your emotions and about seeing things for what they are and not how you really think they are. You know how I am about that. And I encourage that all the time. And in my conversations with Kellie since, she has done that so well. And I have to say, I was actually surprised because since I didn't know her before, I wasn't sure how the conversation would go. And she represents that sitting with your emotions and seeing things for how they are and not how you want them to be. She represents that more beautifully than anybody that I've dealt with in a long time. And so I really wanted her to come on. She said she was willing to talk about it. And so
Yeah.
here she is. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And, um, like you said, that conversation that we had on spiritual shadow boxing definitely triggered me in more ways than I realized.
Mm,
Um, after the podcast, I was, feeling kind of uncomfortable
hmm
and ungrounded. And so to have the opportunity to speak to you again a few days later and then to be on this is a great gift. And I think that what we had talked about in our previous conversation was about the inner landscape
Yeah.
and about the inner self and doing the work inside first.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of what we want to come here together and talk about in today's podcast is about like the tools that you need to like not react. Like I think
Right.
emotionally, like believe me, a little personal note, like after that conversation and talking to my brother, who was a police officer 3 days later, I reacted. I just kind of went off because
Oh, wow.
like everything that I try to work on and grounding my emotions and using the law of reflection to just and to really kind of try to empathize and see both sides before I react.
hmm
I kind of lost it on my brother. So it's like we're not all perfect. It's a journey, and
Yeah, we're human.
we have our successes, and
hmm
sometimes we have not so well. I don't like to say failure, but because that's judging. But it's another way of learning, like how
Right.
it's another opportunity for learning and growth, and that's what all of these are, really. Don't you
That's
agree?
what it is. We're human. If we were all perfect and did everything right, there wouldn't be a need to exist, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah, we'd all be
So
exactly the same too, right?
exactly, and I think that's what I think that's what we're actually being presented with right now and the time that we're faced here with what's going on in the United States and the
hmm
world globally. I think there's a couple things. I think it's like a mixture of perfect storm, actually. I think the
hmm
coronavirus,
hmm
which we talked about before, actually means the crown.
Right.
And I think, as a spiritual person, people in the spiritual world, we knew something was going to happen on 2020. We all were feeling that something was
hmm
going to happen to be a catalyst if you believe in the ascension or if you believe in
hmm
the rising of our energetic bodies.
hmm
But no one thought it was going to come in this form.
No, well, we couldn't know how it was going to come. We knew it was coming with
We knew
everything
it was
that was
coming.
predicted through astrology and everything.
Exactly.
We knew this was going to be a turbulent year. So, yeah, but this pandemic as bad as it is, and as sorry as I am about people dying and how many people are sick and are going to have chronic illnesses, I do think it has forced us to go inward because we can't stay as busy. We're forced to be at home in lockdown. We're forced to be, quiet. And if we're not quiet, then we're inundated with all the stuff on the news. And so
Right.
you're either overwhelmed with all this negativity coming at you, or you're in quiet. And so those are like two extremes, and people are having to come to terms with stuff instead of just being busy with work or,
Exactly.
school and, all of that kind of stuff.
Juggling the kids, juggling the work. I agree.
Mhm.
It's like the COVID took away most distractions from people's lives.
Yep. Mhm.
I think, and that busy, distracted mind was not a fertile ground to do the work, to do the
No.
landscape. I'm gonna
No,
go
it really wasn't.
with landscaping puns here. But you know what
Mhm.
I mean? It's like that landscape of your heart inside, the shadow work that, we all kind of just gloss over or not even, and some people don't even want to even look at, and the
Right.
distractions of taking Johnny to the baseball field and, Betty to the ballet or whatever your life is, or two jobs, or whatever it is. It's like all of a sudden everybody's life gets small,
Mhm.
so our hearts could get big
Mhm.
if you want
Mhm.
to do the work.
That's the key, if you wanna do the work.
Right. And
And
I think,
so, can I ask you, you were saying that you were uncomfortable after the conversation,
yeah,
for the last podcast on, spiritual shadow boxing, and can I ask you to talk a little bit about what you did to actually get still and, get centered and think about the conversation afterwards?
sure. Well, the first thing I did was to call a friend of mine, Owen, who, I trust his opinion, and as a spiritual person, he's also a reverend. And I kind of, I explained the conversation, and why I was, like the whole world white privilege, how it really kind of bothered me and got underneath my skin and got me very defensive,
Mhm.
you know, and, and by talking to him and then with you later to understand that the word privilege, there's a lot of privilege. I'm privileged
Mhm.
as a woman, I'm a privileged as being a white woman, but he was privileged as being a male and
Right.
educated. And there's the educational privilege. So
Mhm.
there's so many layers of privilege.
Yeah,
But
it's intersectional, so yeah.
when I looked at it that way, at the deeper layers
Mhm.
underneath that term, I could sit with it better.
Okay.
It made me feel better. So that was one thing, by finding counsel with somebody that I respected, and understanding, and every single opportunity of a conversation with somebody that doesn't agree with you is a way for you to relook at something differently.
Mhm. Mhm.
So with that, and then, with my own personal meditation, I kind of, when I went into my meditation, I think that, the meditation, prayer, well, somebody told me this, and I always love: prayer is talking to God,
Mhm.
meditation is listening to God,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
my followers have heard me say that plenty. So,
So
yeah,
you
that's
can
true.
pray all you want, but I think that, meditation or whatever you want to call it, if you don't want to call it, like, it's just a pausing,
Mhm.
connecting to your body, your
Mhm.
breath, your heartbeat. And
Mhm.
in those pauses, especially that I find that the pause between the inhale and the exhale, if you begin to just allow those pauses to get larger, there's a lot of innate wisdom that can come in.
Yes. Mhm.
So I had to look at myself. And that's where the law of reflection came into, and that's another tool that I used, because my mentors are these women from the Divine University. There's, maybe 15 teachers that teach through um, that modality, and, law of reflection and law of intention that we talked about a little bit
Mhm.
about. If I looked at, like, if I really look at reflection and find out if each of us are a mirror to be
Mhm.
held up in front of each other. So
Mhm.
when I see something that I'm dislike, or feel like, offended by, or there's such a strong negative emotion, let me look deeper into that.
Right.
Let me look at
Mhm.
deeper into that reflection. What is it that might be within me that I don't like about myself? And that's what we talk about, that doing that inner work,
Right.
healing
Right.
that inner child,
Mhm.
the shadow work, whatever terminology you want to use for it, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I did for a couple of days. And then even, um, so I did that. I really sat with it. I sat
Mhm.
with it. I sat how it felt with me, like why it felt that way, what I could learn from it. And even when you had called me and you were emailing it and all that, and I still wasn't to the point where I felt more work to do. And I said, let me sit and meditate more on this.
Yeah, I could tell you felt like you had more work to do because the first response, the first email you sent me was like, "Thanks for reaching out. I'm glad you did." And it was like just kind of that. And I was like, "Oh, all right, she's not ready." And that's when I sent you the second one saying, "Well, here's some things that I usually say with my students. Maybe this would help you think about it." And you said, "Let me sit with it." And I was like, "Okay, she's gonna do the work." Because so many people are like, "Yeah, yeah." But you were like, let me sit with it. And then you said, maybe we could have a phone call. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so excited because I was like, all right, here's somebody who's walking her talk. So
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was really happy when you said, let's
And,
do a phone
and that
call.
email triggered me a little bit too, by the way.
Oh, did it? I thought it might. I tried to be gentle with the way I worded it,
I'm
but I
like,
was like, here's something to think about.
this is how you triggered me. She's trying to school me. I'm like, I've been doing a lot of damn work for many years, and she's trying to school me. That was my ego reaction. And I said, shut up, ego,
Well, so yeah, when I reached out to you, I knew that you were uncomfortable when we got off the call, and I sat with it for days wondering, should I try to reach out to her or not? And I only had your email.
Right.
And so when Freshta and I talked, and she was like, "Yeah, go ahead, reach out to her," and I sent you the email, and I could tell that you still were kind of in your feelings with the first one, and so when I sent the second one, we're like, "Here's some things to think about." What I was thinking was, I don't want to let this go because I can see she's struggling, and I don't know if she'll take it from me or not, but I don't want to let it go, because that was an opportunity that if I hadn't spoken up or said anything, you would either still been in your feelings or, you would have just been like, she's just totally wrong and I don't want to have anything to do with her and I don't understand. And I didn't want to leave it at that. I wanted us to come to some kind of, agreement and understanding and both to look at, how we were approaching things and, why one of us was triggered. you know, and I really wanted to move past that and just make sure that we could get on some sort of agreement, even if it was to agree to disagree.
Right, right.
And, I just didn't want to leave anything hanging. And I felt like things were still hanging.
No, and I'm very glad that you initiated that. And, like, and I thank you for triggering me, you know.
Oh, oh, you're welcome. I mean, I didn't mean to. I can't help it when I
But I
do, but
think, and I strongly believe people come into your life, in soul groups, to remind you of your soul contract.
hmm
The biggest thing that I've been working on my own personal meditation when I go in it and I ask the question, what is my soul's purpose in this here now moment in this body,
hmm
this
hmm
timeline, and and I think that's an important question that we all have to go deep in when we're doing that inner
yeah,
work to ask
yeah.
ourselves.
hmm
And it's not gonna, as much as I know, it's not easy to go in.
No, no, it's not. I have done so much spiritual work probably the last 6 years, and the more you learn and the more you're open to, the more difficult it gets because the lessons get harder, right? It's like,
Exactly,
okay,
exactly.
you feel like, "All right, I got this. I can handle this level." And then the next level comes and it's like, "Oh my god," and it shakes you for a minute and it takes a while to get back centered and, to be okay with things as they're coming and to handle how quickly they come, you
And
know?
that's a very important point you said, because what I think is when you do the work, the more work you do, you still are going to be triggered, but the amount of time from being triggered to recovery
Yeah,
is shorter.
it is.
It
Mhm.
becomes shorter and shorter to
Mhm.
where it's almost like it could be like in a matter of minutes.
It really could. It
Yeah,
really could. When you get good at recognizing what's happening, when you go,
right.
"Oh, I'm feeling this type of way," and instead of like stewing in it, you can say, "Oh, why am I feeling this way?" And you can get quiet and you can find it, and then you can be ready to move on. So yeah, with practice, it can
Practice.
get shorter, and it depends on how much you get triggered, what it is. Because some things are pretty quick. You can go, "Oh, all right, that's why I feel like that. I can move on." Other things you're like, "Ah." It's gonna take me a minute.
Exactly, exactly. So that, and I think that, like you say, as you're going deeper and deeper after years and years of practicing and working on it, you do think sometimes you got it.
Yeah. Mhm,
And that's that spiritual egotism that people talk
mhm,
about, right?
mhm. And as
Um,
soon as you think you got it, something's gonna trip you up.
yeah, you're gonna get a 2x4 in
My
your head.
experience.
I look like 2x4, boom, right there. But so so you just have to kind of have a sense of humor and understand that it's a process, it's a journey. I know it's like, such a cliche to say it's a journey, but it is a
But it
journey.
is.
It
It
is
is,
a
because if
journey.
it was static, there would be no change, and so as long as there's change, that's a journey or a process, so yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that too that we talked about how I went from processing this is, meditation, meditation, meditation is
Mhm,
my first tool, you know.
mhm.
And by meditation, it's like, and everybody's like, oh, the ego gets a bad rap, but no, it's not. It's an unintegrated ego
Mhm,
that
mhm.
tries to pull the strings.
Right.
That
Yeah.
is what we need to work with. Like,
Right. The ego
like,
always wants to be in charge,
yeah,
even
and
though it thinks it knows everything.
you're right. And you can thank your ego because the ego was there to protect you when you were a child to,
Mhm.
teenage years until you started to start to look at the world with bigger eyes and a bigger vision. But like, I think in our society, the ego and the mind ego connection is too strong sometimes. I feel like,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I can totally see that, that makes sense.
You know, but there's a higher mind and a higher
Mhm,
ego and a higher
mhm.
heart. And again, I hate to use higher and lower, but it's the only human words right now that
Right,
in our vocabulary that kind of is clear, gives you a clear definition of the conversation we're trying to have.
right.
You
Mhm.
got your multidimensional self, which I tend to like better than a higher or lower self. You
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
whatever. It's like whatever
I
you want
think
to.
higher and lower is easier to understand, though.
I think so. So
Yeah.
with the ego, it's like, and that's why I love, the meditation of like going into the heart and into the labyrinth of the heart and finding that secret God in there where you
Mhm.
lay in kind of a position to be in a place of allowing things to happen.
Okay, yes.
You know what I mean?
You know what? That is so that I'm glad you said that. That place of allowing things to happen, allowing yourself to open up when you can move from trying to push and trying to make it happen into allowing things to happen, that's where the magic is. And it's hard to maintain that though, especially in our culture where, we're raised to push, push, push and keep going.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when I was talking with Reshta, we were talking about how we're raised to, push beyond, ignore our bodies and keep working,
Yeah.
even when we're sick, we still got to work, and even when we're tired, we still work on the weekends and we still work, more than 40 hours. And we're so used to pushing that it takes a long time to untrain yourself from that. And I've been running my own business and working for myself for a while. And I'm still learning that. I still have days where I want to keep pushing and I have to tell myself, no, it's time to stop.
And
I've
some
got to
people don't
learn
understand
balance.
that because I've been self-employed my whole life as a photographer,
Mhm.
and and a lot of people, and my partner is my Rupert, who's my partner in life as well as in work, and
Mhm.
in regards to the photography, never could understand the idea of like not like he feels like the do, and I do too, and I did for a long time.
Mhm.
I always knew at the beginning, even the back of my head, that if you're in a place of allowing, things come to you, and
Right.
I would tell a story like when I was in my 20s and I was just starting out and I needed $657 for rent. Okay.
Mhm.
Like a weirdest number, like 600. And I just made that number up, but it was a number.
Uh-huh.
And, I had my own business as a photographer. I was trying to make it work. And I also was waiting on tables and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I got a job for $657.
Wow. Yeah.
And then these little things, the synchronicities, these little things, these markers, if you want to say, to
Mhm.
allow you to understand and have faith in the being.
Yes. Yes.
And
Mhm.
so I would tell that story and even now I think it's so powerful right now. I don't know how you feel about manifestation.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
things like are manifesting like within
They are.
hours.
Mhm.
But again, it's not like the movie The Secret or anything like that. It's not like a magic button or a magic
Right.
book.
It's not like you can just make a wish and be like, "Okay, it's gonna
Yeah,
happen,"
you have to do the work,
Yeah.
and you have to be in a place of allowing, which is
Yes.
very hard. for
Mhm.
our culture.
Yeah, it really is. But I've got stories like that. Actually, recent stories where things
I love that.
manifested for me within hours, just like that. Of me asking and um, actually the thing that happened just a couple weeks ago, I was actually like near tears arguing with spirit about what I needed to do. But I did what they said instead of doing what I wanted, and it turned out okay because I received everything I needed.
There you go.
So yeah.
And that builds faith,
Mhm.
right? It builds faith.
Yeah.
I love those stories, and it's in some ways I feel like it's almost a reward for putting in the work on the inner landscape.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And going back to our culture of go go go, it is a masculine mindset.
Mhm.
You can call it the divine masculine if you want to bring it in a spiritual kind of
Mhm.
context.
Mhm.
And then there's the feminine, and as we know, it corresponds to the left and right hemispheres of the brain.
Mhm.
The right and the left are one's considered male dominant and others female. And there's science behind the two and what the brain works with, creativity,
Mhm.
art, music, languages, the feminine, math, science is the masculine, and then the masculine is the doing. It's the
Mhm.
moving through action in three-dimensional world. The
Mhm.
feminine is the being and the receiving, but you need both. It's the integration
You
of
have
both.
to have both. And I
I'm just
think
hoping to talk about that.
as we enter the age of Aquarius, we're gonna be moving more from that go, 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 do, do, do all the time into learning how to be. And that transition is not easy. And
Do
I
you,
think
do
that's
you
what
think
people are doing.
do you think COVID kind of was the initiation into that?
I think so. I think that was the spark for the transition into the age of Aquarius and the time where we're going to be. It's also the age of Aquarius is also a time of revolution, which is where we are now. It's also a time of people coming together and working together as a collective instead of working just as individuals and looking out for self. And so I think all of the stuff that's happening right now is really transitioning us into that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I do agree, and that might trigger somebody by saying that about COVID. Um,
Yeah.
but I think I tend to believe that, and
Mhm.
because again, if you sit with things and if you look at I have like more of that observer or witness of
Right.
what's going on,
Mhm.
and see with the eyes of an eagle and see the whole picture instead of this
Right. That
narrative that you're telling
concept of
yourself.
being the observer of
Yeah,
yourself instead of being in yourself. Yeah.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I love that. So I think that anybody that watching this that understand that, don't be afraid to do that, like inner work. And I think that's what you're moving towards in your own work, uh,
Mhm.
your ministry, your personal ministry, and
Yeah.
like your business is your ministry,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, everything that I do, everything that I post is all about getting people to have that inner awareness and recognize concepts that they haven't seen before and then be open to that um so that they can be more effective when they're doing their social justice. People aren't going to be able to participate in these social justice movements and move our culture towards equity unless they're actually already comfortable with who they are, you
I
know?
agree with you. And let me ask you a question. In regards to white privilege and a lot of people that are activists, like I would like to see people move away from that guilt to be an activist into more of a loving, open heart
Mhm.
space.
Mhm.
How do you
That's
feel about that?
I would love that. That's why the anti-racism that I teach is always integrated with self-care
Yeah.
because I don't want people to be doing it from a place of guilt because that limits you so much.
Mm.
You can only do so much from guilt. Guilt gets in the way of your learning. It gets in the way of how you process. It just gets in the way of everything. And that's why my motto for my courses is no blame, no shame, no guilt, because I want people to show up and be fully themselves and to learn. Forgive yourself for what you didn't know, for actions that you took in the past. Love yourself for who you are and recognize your power. And
Mhm.
when you can do that, then you can learn, you can see other people for who they are and appreciate them for who they are. And you're ready to stand up for equity and justice and not just focus on, yourself. So, yeah, I totally agree with that.
No, I love that. And then also coming from a place of guilt is really about yourself too, like
Hmm.
erasing that guilt. So like, um, and how can you really serve? when you're coming from that place.
Yeah, when it's all about you, how is it about the other person?
Right. And
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is amazing. And
Oh, thank you.
I think that, I'm on your team for however I can help you moving.
Oh, thank you so much.
Like Owen, my friend Owen, who's the Reverend, we were having like a little mini podcast here. Not, but we didn't publish or anything. We're just kind of like playing around. And but the thing is, what like him and I, and probably you, is like creating a new church.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's based on the self care, the self love, the
Yeah.
divine self love
Mhm.
is what I like to call it. And
Yeah.
understanding, like the early Christians called it the way,
Mhm.
because it was the
Mhm.
way of light and love.
Right. Right.
If we could go back to the
We
way.
could go back to that. That would be awesome. Do you know how much less stress people would have if they weren't feeling guilty about being who they are?
I
How
know,
much more powerful people would be?
I know. It
Yeah.
is. It is. People just put themselves in their own self-created prison.
Well,
You
it's
know?
not even all self-created. I think a lot of it is created by society, and then we just grow up that way and perpetuate it.
No, yeah, you're true. You're true.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Yeah,
great.
but now with this transition that we're going through, I think people are going to learn how to let that go and how to stand in their full power and how to be there to stand up for other people who can't. And I don't know. I'm hopeful about the future.
Me too. I'm hopeful, and like meeting people like you, and having other people in my life that are like-minded, and are trying to be, like, light warriors, like I like to say,
Hmm.
not just light workers, but we're warriors. We're trying to create this new paradigm, and understanding about our potential as
Right.
divine beings.
Hmm.
We've forgotten.
Yeah, we really have. We
You
have.
know?
Yeah. So let me ask you, okay, so once you've done all of this inner work, and I hear what you're saying about the social justice and everything, I want to ask you, how are you approaching things differently when it comes to like maybe the social justice stuff that you've been talking about? Are you thinking about it differently, or are you doing anything differently now that you've actually sat with, the emotions from before that aren't going to trigger you now? If you hear the term white privilege, is there something that you would do differently, like in a discussion when that would come up?
Sure, I'm definitely not triggered by that anymore.
Okay.
Privilege, that
Mhm.
before I'd be like, "Ooh,
I think when I said that's privilege talking, I think you literally sat up because as soon as I said it, I was like, oh, because I felt the energy from you.
I know I probably did. I went, whoa. I felt it go in the back of my head. I go, whoa. Now you can say, now I'm like, oh, say whatever. You can say whatever. Um, One thing you did say though, also that I found was, and how I probably would change the way I had conversations about this, was another thing that you said that
Mhm.
we didn't discuss was, and I thought it was very powerful when you said it, was again, was like, I think you said something like, like again, it was like, white people saying how you should define or create things. Like, again, when I was saying, well, maybe a different name would be more productive, and you're just saying, you remember that part of the conversation?
Yeah, I was saying something about, white people don't get to define how Black people are
Yes.
going to protest.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was it. Um, you know, but that didn't trigger me. But what that did was open my eyes
Hmm.
to something I didn't really think of before.
Okay.
It,
Okay.
it was maybe a good trigger.
Okay. All right. Good.
It wasn't one of those triggers. It was more like, oh, hmm. You know?
Uh-huh.
So I think now when I I'm not like I wouldn't say, it's again like somebody coming up and say, oh, you should do this, or you should write. That's not the right way to do it. And
Yeah.
I kind of was approaching it that way.
Mhm.
And maybe I was, was I approaching it from an egoic stance? I don't know. That's, again, I would have to sit with
I
that.
think I think you were approaching it from your lived experience. In our society, white people get to dictate who does what and how.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're so used to being in that position of authority and
Mhm.
being able to say this is how we speak, this is how you have to speak in order to fit into society. And Black people are so used to conforming, except for, when we rise up for something. I think you were just going off of your lived experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that,
And
you know, I
then
thought
and
that
then
was
you
very
just happened to
powerful.
come across a Black woman who was like, "I know this is the typical, but I'm gonna challenge that." And I think I actually said, "I'm gonna challenge that statement."
I think you did. And, you know, again, that led to us talking about intention versus impact, you know, which I
Mhm.
think was a very good point.
Yeah.
You know, I think that we had talked privately about like, you know, I think you have to have both, you know, and
Mhm.
again, it's really hard. Like you said, sometimes you can have intentions without any action.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why I think a marriage of intention and impact
Mhm.
is so such a beautiful
And
thing,
a
you
lot
know,
of times you have action without any conscious
impact. Yeah,
intention, and people think that because they didn't consciously intend to hurt you, that, that's okay.
right.
And the example that I use with intentions and impact is, if I'm in my car, I'm sitting in my car, let's say we were sitting there and you were standing next to me and we were, like, saying goodbye or whatever after a visit, and then I'm like, "Alright, see you later," and I drive off, and I accidentally roll over your foot. I did not intend to break your foot or cause you any harm, but the impact is that you now have a broken foot, you've got hospital bills, you've got pain, you may have to miss work. And so even though I didn't intend to hurt you, the impact is that you had real damage. And
Right.
it's my responsibility to go back and try to fix that. And to make sure that when I don't intend to hurt people in the future, that I actually set real intentions,
Right.
so that I don't do that.
That's great. That's a great visual, great, you know, yeah.
Thanks, thank you.
And
Because a lot of times when we talk about impact and intention, people it's just words, and
right,
people don't understand the actual impact that it has because, sticks and stones may make your bones, and words still hurt, you
right.
know?
Oh,
Words
they
still have
do.
impact. They
Yeah.
shape the way people think and the way people behave, and so, I think putting it in a concrete example where, I didn't mean to actually physically hurt you, but I did, then people go, "Oh, now I get the difference." So
No, it's almost like, you know, when you go to couples therapy, you know, when you're having a conversation, maybe a difficult conversation about some of the things with the activism that's going on,
mhm,
you know, you know, I just know because, you know, I did go to a little couple therapy and they would make you like sit next to each other or in front of each other and you would say something and then the other person, they would ask the other person to repeat what that person said
mhm,
and then back and forth. So the conversation didn't get lost in translation. Like, so you
yeah,
can say, and then, you know, the person can say, well, I didn't really mean that. Like, that was not my intention to say that, but the person heard it. So they had the impact without you
right.
realizing the intention. And
Mhm.
so I think that it's really good to like, you know, when we're having discussions like this and moving forward, when I have discussions, I might say something. And then maybe what I should say is, how did you receive that?
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how do those words how did you know and then
Mhm.
we can have a dialogue that way going back and
Yeah.
forth understanding and respecting like even though I might be saying in a certain way that I think is with intention of love and support they
Mhm.
might be hearing it in a different way and impacting them differently so
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think
And
again
I think I did a little bit of that in the podcast because I
yeah
said, "I know these are the words you said, but this is still what I heard
no
and this
you
is how it
did you did
felt."
it really well that's what I'm saying couple therapy
Couples therapy.
you know
Yeah, that's just I don't know, that's just the way that I teach after, so much time spending time with people and people talking past each other and across each other and missing intentions. I really try to be very clear about, okay, this is I heard these words and this is how it felt to me or
yeah
this is what it sounded
no
like.
that's an
So,
amazing ability to have and to share
oh,
with people
thank you.
because you know like you're really kind of crossing divides there you're kind of like kind of
Yeah, I call myself a bridge. So thank you for that. Thank you. I
you
love
are a bridge
that. Thank you. Well, this has been a pretty deep discussion. I think we've given people a lot to think about.
I know
And people know that I like to close out with a meditation. And since you do meditations, I would love it if you would lead us in a meditation before we go.
okay I would love that
Okay.
all
Thank
right so everybody close their eyes get into a comfortable seat shoulders soft hands on your thighs and let's take a deep breath together slowly breathing in through the nose bringing that breath down into your throat, into the top of your heart, and into the center of your heart as you hold that breath there. Finding that inner landscape, that garden within your heart as this pause expands. And then slowly exhale through your mouth, releasing all programming, fear, and limitations. Again, a nice, slow, mindful breath from the source as it moves down the back of your throat, braiding itself from the left and the right, the feminine and the masculine. Finding the deep recess of your heart, the secret garden, the shadow, to open up into this breath, bringing light and love, reflection, intention, oneness. And then slowly exhale through your mouth, releasing all limiting programming and fear. One last deep breath together as we become the witness, the observer of our own breath, of our own beloved nature. Feeling the breath now move down through the eyes, through the throat, into the heart, into that secret garden where we sit in a place of allowing, receiving, opening up to divine self-love. And then exhale slowly with intent, letting go all that no longer serves, for the mother, the earth, to receive. Find your own tempo now, your own rhythm, as you become the bridge from the source above into your heart and into the heart of the mother, the earth, the goddess. One last cleansing breath, breathing in deeply this holy, living breath of the divine into the beloved divine flame of your heart, igniting this flame in 6 directions all around you. Holding that breath. And then one deep final exhale, letting go of all limitations, fear, for the mother to receive. Feel your heartbeat. Feel your left and right palm. Feel your left and right feet. As you begin to slowly open your eyes now to begin your personal ministry as the beloved in form. And when you're ready, You can open your eyes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I feel so much more grounded.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we go, I want to ask if there's anything that you want to say that you didn't get the opportunity to say.
Well, I will say that I have a YouTube station now, and my guided meditations are up there. Um,
Okay.
they're, they're 45 to an hour long, and they're activation meditations working on the chakras and
Okay.
latent DNA, the junk DNA, which is not really junk
Uh,
DNA, as we kind of build up the space between our body to receive more light and frequency and energy.
okay. And
And,
what's the name of your YouTube channel?
Kellie Walsh, my name.
Kelly Walsh. Okay.
And what I want to say is, I love the opportunity to sit and speak with you, and hope that
Oh,
we have
thank you.
more opportunities to work together,
Yeah.
creating the way.
Yes. 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 Thank you. And I will put the link to your YouTube channel. And if you want to put a link to the Divine Hive, I'll put that in the description too.
Sure, I'll send you a link, and the same with you. I'll share your information to people that on my Divine Hive site and my Kelly Walsh photography site,
Oh, thank
and
you.
spread the word about what you're doing, because I feel like it's so important and so timely. So
Thank you. Thank you so much for being willing to do this interview. And thank you for being willing to be vulnerable because the process that you went through was not an easy one. And a lot of people who go through it don't want to talk about it. And I think it's so important to like show that example for people who don't understand and who don't know. And so I'm very, very grateful to you for coming on and being willing to talk about it.
thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. All right.
All right. Well, you guys, fierce love, and I will see you next time.